The evening sky had turned a deep purple as Dr. Aiden Chen pulled into his driveway. His shoulders ached from standing over an operating table for 8 straight hours. All he wanted was a hot shower and sleep. Lots of sleep. He had just turned off the engine of his car when his phone rang. The hospital's number flashed on the screen. Aiden sighed, knowing that his day wasn't over yet. "Dr. Chen speaking," he answered, rubbing his tired eyes. "Doctor, we have an emergency." The voice of Nurse Patel came through, tense and urgent. "There's been a major car accident. A teenage girl with severe head trauma. CT scan shows intracranial, bleeding and possible brain swelling." Aiden sat up straight, fatigue instantly pushed aside. "How bad?" "Critical." "And, Doctor..." "It's Police Chief Sullivan's daughter, Lily." Aiden didn't hesitate. "I'm on my way." He reversed out of his driveway, his mind already shifting to what he would need to do. As one of the few neurosurgeons in the city qualified to perform certain delicate procedures, he knew the girl's chances might depend entirely on him reaching the hospital quickly. The digital clock on his dashboard read 9:47 p.m. If traffic was light, he could make it to Metro General in 20 minutes. He took the fastest route, driving his black luxury sedan a careful 5 miles over the speed limit. Too fast would risk getting pulled over. Too slow could cost Lily Sullivan her life. As he drove through Pine Ridge, an upscale neighborhood that served as a shortcut, Aiden noticed a police cruiser in his rearview mirror. It had been following him for about half a mile. He checked his speed, exactly at the limit now, and kept driving. The cruiser's lights suddenly flashed blue and red. Aiden felt a sinking feeling in his stomach but pulled over right away, putting on his hazard lights. He reached for his wallet with his license and the glove compartment for his registration. Through his rearview mirror, he watched 2 officers exit their vehicle. One stood back, hand resting near his holster, while the other approached, flashlight beam aimed directly at Aiden's face, making him squint. "License and registration," the officer demanded without any greeting. His nameplate read, "Officer Dawson." Aiden handed over his documents. "Officer, I'm Dr. Aiden Chen from Metro General Hospital. I've been called in for an emergency surgery and need to get there as soon as possible. A young girl's life depends on it." The officer studied his license with exaggerated slowness. "And what brings you through Pine Ridge tonight, Doctor? You don't live around here, do you?" "No, sir. It's the fastest route to the hospital from my home." Aiden kept his voice calm and respectful. "Like I said, it's an emergency situation. We've had reports of suspicious vehicles in the area, Officer," Dawson said, shining his flashlight around the interior of Aiden's car. "Nice car for a doctor. What kind of doctor did you say you were?" "I'm a neurosurgeon. Officer, please, I really need to get to the hospital. You can call and verify if you need to." Aiden tried to keep the growing anxiety out of his voice. Every minute mattered in cases of traumatic brain injury. "Step out of the vehicle, please," Officer Dawson said, stepping back and opening Aiden's door. "Is that really necessary? I told you, there's a critical patient." "Out of the car now." The officer's tone had hardened. Aiden unbuckled his seatbelt and stepped out, his white coat from earlier in the day still hanging in the back seat with his hospital ID clipped to the pocket. "Hands on the hood," the second officer instructed, moving forward. His nameplate read, "Officer Reynolds." "Listen, officers, I understand you're doing your job, but I'm telling you there's a teenage girl who needs brain surgery. Right now. This is literally life or death." Aiden placed his hands on the hood as instructed, feeling a mix of frustration and disbelief. "We'll be quick if you cooperate," Officer Reynolds said, beginning to pat Aiden down. "What's in your pockets?" "Just my phone and keys," Aiden answered. "My hospital ID is in my coat in the back seat. Please look at it." Officer Dawson was scrolling through Aiden's license information on the cruiser's computer. "Says here you've been stopped before." "Once, 3 years ago. I got a warning for a broken taillight," Aiden explained, trying to remain composed despite the growing sense of urgency. "And what about drugs, doctor? We find a lot of prescription medications being sold illegally these days." Aiden felt his patience slipping. I don't have any drugs. I'm a surgeon on my way to perform emergency surgery. Please call the hospital. Ask for Nurse Patel or Dr. Williams. They'll confirm everything. Officer Reynolds was now looking through Aiden's car with his flashlight. What's in the bag? He asked, pointing to Aiden's gym bag on the back seat. Workout clothes. I go to the gym in the mornings. Officer Dawson stepped closer. You seem nervous, Doctor. Any reason for that? Yes, because every minute we spend here puts a young girl at greater risk, Aiden said, his voice tight with restraint. Her name is Lily Sullivan. She's Chief Sullivan's daughter. She was in a car accident and has a brain bleed that I need to address immediately. Both officers paused and exchanged glances at the mention of the police chief's name. Chief Sullivan's daughter? Officer Reynolds repeated. Yes, Aiden nodded emphatically. Call it in if you don't believe me. Officer Dawson moved back to the cruiser and spoke into his radio. Meanwhile, Officer Reynolds continued to search Aiden's car. What are you looking for? Aiden asked, still standing with his hands on the hood. Just routine, Officer Reynolds replied curtly. Aiden's phone rang, in his pocket. That's probably the hospital. Can I answer it? Officer Reynolds nodded reluctantly. Aiden pulled out his phone. It was indeed the hospital. This is Dr. Chen, he answered. Doctor, where are you? It was Dr. Williams, his colleague. Lily's condition is deteriorating. Her intracranial pressure is rising, and we need to get her into surgery now. I'm being detained by police officers in Pine Ridge. I've explained the situation, but they're still searching my car, Aiden said loudly enough for the officers to hear. There was a pause on the other end. You're what? Give the phone to the officers. Aiden held out the phone to Officer Reynolds. My colleague wants to speak with you. After a moment's hesitation, the officer took the phone. Aiden could hear Dr. Williams's voice raised, though he couldn't make out the exact words. Officer Reynolds's expression changed, and he quickly handed the phone back to Aiden. We're preparing her for surgery, but we can't proceed without you, Dr. Williams told Aiden when he got the phone back. Her father is here and frantic. Tell them I'm coming as soon as I can, Aiden replied, looking pointedly at the officers. Due. That moment, Officer Dawson returned from the cruiser. We just got confirmation about Chief Sullivan's daughter, he said to his partner. His tone had completely changed. We need to let the doctor go. Officer Reynolds nodded and stepped back. You're free to go, Doctor. Sorry for the delay. Aiden didn't waste time responding. He got back into his car, his hands slightly shaking from the adrenaline and anger. As he started the engine, he checked the time, 10:21 p.m. The detainment had cost him over 30 minutes, 30 crucial minutes that Lily Sullivan couldn't afford to lose. As he drove away, lights flashing in his mirror again, Aiden realized the police cruiser was now escorting him. Under different circumstances, he might have appreciated the irony. Now all he could think about was getting to that operating room and hoping he wasn't too late. The hospital came into view, its emergency entrance blazing with lights. Aiden could see the activity even from a distance, a sign that things were serious. He pulled up to the emergency entrance, leaving his car in the ambulance zone. He'd move it later. Right now, nothing mattered except getting to Lily. As he rushed through the automatic doors, Nurse Patel spotted him immediately and hurried. Over. Doctor, thank goodness, she said, already walking quickly toward the elevators. They're prepping her in OR3. Dr. Williams has started the initial procedures, but... How bad? Aiden asked, matching her pace. Intracranial pressure is at dangerous levels. Possible hemorrhaging in 2 locations. They're fighting to stabilize her. The elevator seemed to move in slow motion. Aiden's mind raced through possible scenarios, techniques, approaches. By the time they reached the surgical floor, he had already mentally prepared for several contingencies. As they rushed down the corridor, Aiden saw a man pacing outside the operating room, tall, broad-shouldered, in a police uniform with chief's insignia. Chief Sullivan looked up as Aiden approached, his face etched with fear and desperation. Are you Dr. Chen? He asked, his voice rough with emotion. Yes, sir. I'm going in now, Aiden replied, already moving toward the doors. The chief grabbed his arm. "Save my daughter. Please." Aiden met his eyes. "I'll do everything I can." Inside the scrub room, Aiden washed his hands with practiced efficiency, while a nurse briefed him on Lily's vital signs and the procedures already completed. As he pushed through the doors into the operating room, the familiar controlled chaos greeted him. Machines beeping, surgical staff moving with purpose, the bright lights illuminating the small figure on the table. Dr. Williams looked up from where he was monitoring the girl's brain scans. "Chen, finally. We've got expanding epidural hematoma and signs of increasing ICP. Pupil on the right is blown." Aiden nodded. His focus absolute as a nurse helped him into his gown and gloves. Looking at the monitors, he could see that Lily's condition was even more precarious than he'd feared. The delay had cost them precious time, but there was still a chance. There had to be. "Let's begin," he said, stepping up to the table where Chief Sullivan's daughter lay, her life hanging in the balance. A life that now rested in his hands after being unnecessarily delayed by the very department her father commanded. As the first incision was made, Aiden pushed everything else from his mind. The unfair detainment, the thinly veiled prejudice, the wasted time. None of that mattered now. All that mattered was saving this girl's life if it wasn't already too late. The operating room fell silent except for the steady beep of monitors and the soft clatter of surgical instruments. Dr. Aiden Chen worked with intense focus, his movements precise and deliberate as he navigated the delicate tissues of Lily Sullivan's brain. The damage was extensive, worse than the scans had indicated. "Suction here," he murmured, never taking his eyes off the field of operation. "More light." Dr. Williams stood across from him, assisting with practiced efficiency. "BP's dropping," he said quietly. Aiden nodded, already aware of the monitor's warning. "Push another unit of plasma, let's get ahead of the bleeding." For the next 4 hours, Aiden fought against time and trauma, repairing ruptured vessels and carefully removing blood that was compressing Lily's brain. Every move carried risk, every decision potentially life-altering, but this was what he had trained for, what he had dedicated his life to. Finally, after the most critical repairs were complete, Aiden stepped back slightly. "Let's begin closure. Keep her sedated and monitored in ICU. We'll need to watch for increased pressure." As Aiden finished the final steps of the procedure, the weight of what had happened began to settle on his shoulders. If he had arrived half an hour earlier, Lily's prognosis might have been significantly better. The delay caused by those officers might have permanent consequences for this young girl. After scrubbing out, Aiden found Chief Sullivan waiting exactly where he had left him, though now sitting with his head in his hands. The chief looked up as Aiden approached, instantly on his feet. "Doctor? My daughter?" Aiden took a deep breath. "She's stable. We've managed to stop the bleeding and reduce the pressure on her brain. But I have to be honest with you, Chief Sullivan. The next 24 to 48 hours will be critical. But she'll recover. She'll be okay." The desperation in the chief's voice was painful to hear. "There was significant trauma," Aiden explained gently. "The brain is resilient, especially in young people, but I can't promise there won't be effects. We simply won't know until she wakes up." Chief Sullivan seemed to age years in those few seconds. "When can I see her?" "They're moving her to ICU now. You can see her once she's settled, but she'll remain sedated for at least a day to give her brain time to heal." The chief nodded, then hesitated. "Dr. Chen, the hospital called me earlier. They said you were detained by officers on your way here?" The exhaustion of the long surgery combined with the memory of his detention hit Aiden all at once. "Yes, I was pulled over in Pine Ridge. Officers Dawson and Reynolds held me for over 30 minutes despite my repeated explanations that I was needed for an emergency surgery." Sullivan's face darkened. "I'll deal with this. Thank you for saving my daughter's life." Aiden wanted to say more, to explain that those 30 minutes might have made a crucial difference, but now wasn't the time. The chief was barely holding himself together. "Get some rest," Aiden said instead. "And call me if you have any questions. I'll check on Lily first thing in the morning." The hospital corridors were quiet as Aiden made his way to the doctor's lounge. It was nearly 4 a.m. He had been awake for over 24 hours and performed 2 major surgeries. His body cried out for sleep, but his mind kept replaying the events of the night. In the lounge, he found Nurse Patel preparing to leave after her shift. She looked up as he entered. "How did it go?" she asked. Aiden sank into a chair. "I don't know, Maya, it was bad. If I had gotten here sooner." Maya sat across from him. "What happened out there? Why did those officers stop you?" Aiden rubbed his face. "The usual. Suspicious vehicle in the area. Code for Asian man driving. A nice car where he doesn't belong." "That's awful," Maya said, her voice tight with anger. "You should file a complaint." "What's the point? It would be my word against theirs." "But the chief's daughter?" "I know." Aiden sighed heavily. "Let's see how she does first. That's all that matters right now." Maya looked like she wanted to argue, but just nodded instead. "You should go home, get some sleep." "I will. Soon." After Maya left, Aiden sat alone in the quiet lounge. He should go home, but the thought of returning to his empty house held little appeal. Instead, he made his way to the ICU to check on Lily one more time. The ICU was dimly lit, nurses moving quietly between patients. Lily's room was at the end of the hall. Through the glass, Aiden could see Chief Sullivan sitting beside his daughter's bed, holding her hand. The sight made something twist in Aiden's chest. He turned away, heading for his office instead. He could crash on the couch there for a few hours before rounds began. Morning arrived too quickly. Aiden woke disoriented, his neck stiff from sleeping awkwardly on his office couch. His phone showed several missed calls from an unknown number. Before he could check them, there was a knock at his door. "Come in," he called, trying to smooth his rumpled clothes. Dr. Williams entered, looking as tired as Aiden felt. "Thought I'd find you here." Lily Sullivan showing positive signs, better reflex responses, stable ICP readings. Relief washed over Aiden. "That's good news." "There's something else," Williams said, his expression turning serious. "The chief's raising hell about what happened last night. He's pulled the dashcam footage from the officers who stopped you." Aiden felt a flicker of unease. And it doesn't look good for them. The way they treated you, it was clearly out of line. "The chief wants to talk to you when you have a moment." Aiden nodded slowly. "I'll go see him after I check on Lily." In the ICU, Lily's condition had indeed improved. Her color was better and her vital signs had stabilized. Chief Sullivan was no longer by her bedside, but a young woman who introduced herself as Lily's mother was there instead. "Dr. Chen," she said, standing to shake his hand. "My husband told me what you did for our daughter and what happened before you got here." Aiden checked Lily's monitors, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "Your daughter is doing well, Mrs. Sullivan. Her signs are encouraging." "Doctor," she said quietly, "my husband is furious about how his officers treated you. He wants to make this right." "The only thing that matters is Lily's recovery," Aiden replied, making notes in the chart. Mrs. Sullivan touched his arm gently. "No, Dr. Chen. Other things matter too. What happened to you matters." Before Aiden could respond, his pager beeped. Another emergency was coming in. "Excuse me," he said, grateful for the interruption. Throughout the day, Aiden was kept busy with patients and consultations. It was early evening before he had a chance to return to the ICU. As he approached Lily's room, he saw Chief Sullivan standing in the hallway, speaking intensely with another man in a suit. The chief spotted Aiden and broke off his conversation. "Dr. Chen, do you have a minute?" "Of course, I was just coming to check on Lily. She's doing better, starting to respond to stimuli. The neurologists are cautiously optimistic." The chief's relief was palpable, but there was something else in his expression, determination perhaps, or anger carefully controlled. "I need to talk to you about last night." Aiden tensed. "Chief Sullivan, please call me Robert." The chief interrupted. "And this is District Attorney Howard." He gestured to the suited man beside him. The DA extended his hand. "Dr. Chen, I understand you had a troubling encounter with some of our officers last night." Aiden shook the man's hand, increasingly uncomfortable. "It was a misunderstanding." "No." Chief Sullivan said firmly. It wasn't. I've reviewed the dash cam footage. What those officers did was unacceptable. They delayed a doctor responding to a critical emergency, my daughter's emergency, because of their own prejudices. We'd like to take your statement, the DA added. Officially, Aiden hesitated. He hadn't planned on pursuing this, hadn't wanted the attention or the inevitable backlash, but the determined look on Chief Sullivan's face told him this wasn't really a request. Can we do this somewhere private? Aiden asked finally. They moved to a small conference room where Aiden recounted the events of the previous night in detail. The unnecessary search, the dismissive attitudes, the wasted time. As he spoke, he could see Chief Sullivan's expression, growing darker. Those 30 minutes, the chief said when Aiden had finished. Could they have made a difference for Lily? This was the question Aiden had been dreading. As a doctor, he was trained to be honest, but compassionate. Possibly, in cases of traumatic brain injury, time is critical. Earlier intervention could have reduced the pressure on her brain sooner, potentially limiting the damage. Chief Sullivan closed his eyes briefly, absorbing the impact of Aiden's words. When he opened them, his resolve was clear. I want to press charges against these officers. Misconduct, racial profiling, reckless endangerment. Robert, the DA cautioned, that's a serious step. My daughter might have permanent brain damage because 2 of my officers couldn't see past their prejudices, the chief replied, his voice tight with controlled fury. I don't care if it's my own department. This ends now. Aiden felt caught, in the middle of something much bigger than he had anticipated. What exactly do you need from me? Your testimony, the DA explained. A formal complaint, medical documentation regarding the potential impact of the delay. It was too much, too fast. Aiden had patients to care for, including Lily. He didn't have time for a crusade, no matter how justified. Can I think about it, he asked. This isn't a decision I can make lightly. Chief Sullivan looked like he wanted to argue but nodded instead. Of course. But Dr. Chen, these men need to be held accountable, not just for Lily, but for anyone else they might treat this way in the future. As Aiden left the conference room, his pager beeped again. Back to work. Back to the world where he knew exactly what to do and how to do it. But the chief's words followed him, echoing in his mind. These men need to be held accountable. Aiden knew he was right. But he also knew that stepping into this fight would change everything. For him, for the officers involved, for the entire community. And he wasn't sure if he was ready for that. 3 days after the surgery, Lily Sullivan opened her eyes. Aiden was there when it happened, checking her vitals during morning rounds. The moment was subtle, just a flutter of eyelids, then a confused gaze scanning the room before finding his face. Hello, Lily, Aiden said gently. I'm Dr. Chen. You're in the hospital. She tried to speak but couldn't around the breathing tube. Panic flashed across her features. It's okay, Aiden assured her. Don't try to talk yet. You were in an accident and needed surgery. You're doing well. Her eyes held questions, but she seemed to understand, giving a tiny nod. Aiden checked her pupil response, pleased to find them equal and reactive. I'm going to call your parents now, he told her. They've been waiting for this moment. Within minutes, Chief Sullivan and his wife rushed into the room. The raw emotion on their faces as they saw their daughter awake brought a lump to Aiden's throat. He stepped back, giving them space for their reunion. Can the tube come out? Mrs. Sullivan asked, tears streaming down her face as she held her daughter's hand. Aiden nodded. I'll get the respiratory therapist. Her breathing has stabilized and she's triggering the ventilator on her own. That's a very good sign. As he turned to leave, Chief Sullivan caught his arm. Thank you, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Later that day, after the breathing tube had been removed and Lily had been evaluated by the neurologist, Aiden sat down with the Sullivan family to discuss her condition. The good news is that Lily is awake, alert, and responsive, he began. Her cognitive functions appear largely intact, which is extremely encouraging. But, Chief Sullivan prompted, hearing the caution in Aiden's voice. But there are some areas of concern, Aiden admitted. She's showing weakness on her left side, particularly in her arm and hand, and she's having some difficulty with recall and short-term memory. Mrs. Sullivan squeezed her husband's hand. Will these problems, are they permanent? It's too early to say for certain. Aiden replied honestly. The brain has remarkable capacity to heal and adapt, especially in young people. With intensive rehabilitation, Lily may regain much of her function. But I need to be clear, there may be some lasting effects from her injury. The chief's jaw tightened. Effects that might have been minimized if you had reached her sooner. It wasn't a question, and Aiden didn't treat it as one. He simply met the chief's gaze steadily. I've made my decision, Chief Sullivan said after a moment. I'm filing formal charges against Officers Dawson and Reynolds. The DA is preparing the case now. Robert, his wife began, looking worried. No, Catherine. This isn't just about Lily anymore. He turned back to Aiden. The dashcam footage shows clear misconduct. They had no cause to detain you, no cause to search your vehicle. Their own words on the recording show bias. I need your testimony, Dr. Chen. Aiden had been thinking about this moment for days, weighing his options, considering the consequences. He had a comfortable life, a respected position at the hospital. Taking a public stand would change that forever. When do you need my answer? He asked quietly. Soon, the chief replied. But I understand this is a big decision. Just know that, whatever you choose, I'm moving forward with this. What those officers did was wrong, and they need to face consequences. That evening, Aiden found himself sitting in his car in the hospital parking lot, unable to bring himself to drive home. The day's events kept replaying in his mind. Lily's awakening, the family's relief tinged with worry, the chief's determination to pursue justice. A tap on his window startled him. It was Maya, bundled up against the evening chill, concern in her eyes. Aiden rolled down the window. You okay? She asked. You've been sitting here for 20 minutes. Aiden sighed. Just thinking. About the Sullivan case? He nodded. The chief wants me to testify against those officers. Maya studied his face. And you're not sure if you should. It's complicated. Is it? Maya leaned against his car. Those officers detained you because of how you look. They delayed life-saving treatment. A girl might have permanent disabilities because of their prejudice. What's complicated about that? My life, for one thing, Aiden replied, a hint of frustration in his voice. If I do this, I become that Asian doctor who complained about racism. Everything I've worked for gets overshadowed by this one incident. Or, Maya countered, you become the doctor who stood up for what's right, who refused to let injustice slide because it was convenient. Aiden didn't respond, and after a moment Maya straightened up. Whatever you decide, I've got your back, she said. But Aiden, sometimes the right choice isn't the easy one. The next morning, Aiden arrived at the hospital earlier than usual. He went straight to Lily's room in the ICU. To his surprise, she was awake, staring out the window at the first light of dawn. Good morning, he said, checking her monitors. How are you feeling today? Weird, she replied, her voice still raspy, from the breathing tube. Like, parts of me are missing. Aiden nodded, understanding. That's not unusual after a brain injury. Your neural pathways are healing, reconnecting. She looked at him directly, her gaze surprisingly clear for someone who had been through such trauma. You're the doctor who saved me. Dad told me what happened, how those cops stopped you. Aiden felt a flicker of annoyance at the chief for burdening his daughter with this information. You don't need to worry about that. Your job is to focus on getting better. But it's my fault, she said, her eyes filling with tears. If you were coming to help me, and they stopped you, and now I can't. I can't feel my hand properly. Her voice broke. No, Aiden said firmly, sitting on the edge of her bed. None of this is your fault. The accident wasn't your fault. What those officers did wasn't your fault. And whatever challenges you're facing now, we'll work through them together. That's my job. She wiped at her tears with her good hand. Dad's really angry. I've never seen him like this. He loves you. He wants justice. Is that what you want too? The question caught Aiden off guard. What did he want? To return to his normal life? To pretend none of this had happened? Or to stand up, to speak out, to ensure that what happened to him wouldn't happen to someone else? I want to do what's right, he said finally. Lily nodded, seeming to accept this answer. Me too. After completing his rounds, Aiden found himself walking to the administrative wing of the hospital. He knocked on the door of the chief of surgery, Dr. Patricia Winters. Do you have a minute? He asked when she looked up from her paperwork. For you, always, she replied, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. What's on your mind? Aiden took a deep breath. I need your advice and possibly your support. He explained the situation, the detention, the delay in reaching Lily, Chief Sullivan's determination to press charges, and his request for Aiden's testimony. Dr. Winters listened without interrupting. When he finished, she leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled under her chin. You realize this could become very public, she said at last. The media loves stories like this, police misconduct, racial profiling, the chief's own daughter as the victim. It would put you in this hospital in the spotlight. I know, Aiden admitted. That's partly why I'm hesitating. What's the other part? Aiden considered the question. Fear, I suppose. Fear of backlash, of becoming a target. Fear that this one incident will define my entire career. Dr. Winters nodded thoughtfully. Those are legitimate concerns. But let me ask you this. If you don't speak up, if you let this slide, could you live with that decision? The question hit home. Could he? Could he look Lily in the eye, knowing that her lasting disabilities might have been prevented if he had reached her sooner? Could he face himself in the mirror knowing he had allowed injustice to go unchallenged because it was easier? I don't think I could, he said quietly. Then you have your answer. Dr. Winters smiled slightly, and for what it's worth, you'll have the full support of this hospital. We stand behind our doctors, especially when they're doing the right thing. That afternoon, Aiden called Chief Sullivan and arranged to meet him at the district attorney's office the following day. The decision was made, he would testify. As he left the hospital that evening, Aiden felt a strange mix of dread and relief. The path ahead would not be easy. He knew that. There would be depositions and statements, possibly a trial. His face might appear on the evening news, his name in newspaper headlines. But for the first time since that night, he felt like he was doing what needed to be done. Not just for Lily Sullivan, not just for himself, but for anyone who had ever been judged, detained, or delayed because of how they looked. His phone rang as he reached his car. It was an unknown number, but something made him answer it anyway. Dr. Chen? The voice was unfamiliar, male with an edge to it. This is Officer Dawson, we need to talk. Aiden's blood ran cold. How did you get this number? That doesn't matter, Dawson replied. What matters is that you're about to make a big mistake, one that could have serious consequences for everyone involved. Are you threatening me? Aiden asked, his voice steady despite the rapid beating of his heart. I'm giving you a friendly warning, Dawson said. Think very carefully about what you're doing. Some stories are better left untold. The line went dead. Aiden stood frozen beside his car, the phone still pressed to his ear, as the implications of what had just happened sank in. The officer had found his personal number, had called to warn him off, had threatened him, not even bothering to disguise it as anything else. Any doubts Aiden might have still harbored about his decision vanished in that moment. This wasn't just about one traffic stop, one night, one patient. This was about power and its abuse, about a system that allowed such abuses to go unchecked. His hands shaking slightly, Aiden dialed Chief Sullivan's number. It's Dr. Chen, he said when the chief answered. We need to meet tonight. Something's happened. The line had been crossed. There was no going back now. Chief Sullivan's face darkened as he listened to the recording Aiden had made of Officer Dawson's call. They sat in the chief's home office, away from the hospital and the police station. Neutral ground, as the chief had called it. "This changes things," Sullivan said when the recording ended. "Intimidating a witness is a serious offense." "I figured as much," Aiden replied, trying to keep his voice steady despite the anxiety churning in his stomach. "That's why I recorded the call when he rang back after I hung up." Sullivan nodded approvingly. "Smart move, we'll add this to the charges." He rubbed his face, suddenly looking exhausted. "I'm sorry, Dr. Chen. These men work for me. Their actions reflect on my department, my leadership." "You can't control every officer's behavior," Aiden said, surprising himself with the impulse to comfort the man. "Maybe not. But I created the culture that allowed this to happen." Sullivan's gaze drifted to a photo on his desk, Lily in a soccer uniform, grinning widely. "And now my daughter is paying the price." Aiden followed his gaze. "How is she doing today?" "Better in some ways. Worse in others." Sullivan sighed. "The physical therapist says she's making progress with her leg, but her hand, and she's having trouble remembering things, gets confused sometimes. She's not the same girl she was a week ago." The pain in the chief's voice was palpable. Aiden had seen it countless times in his career. Families struggling to adjust to the new reality after a loved one's brain injury. "She's young," Aiden offered. "The brain has remarkable plasticity, especially at her age. Don't give up hope for a full recovery." Sullivan nodded, but his expression suggested he wasn't convinced. "What about you, doctor? Are you prepared for what comes next? Once we move forward with these charges, there's no turning back. And with this threat from Dawson, things could get ugly." Aiden had been asking himself the same question since he'd made his decision. Was he ready for the scrutiny, the potential backlash, the way this case might follow him for years to come? "I don't think anyone can be fully prepared for something like this," he answered honestly. "But I'm committed to seeing it through." "Good man." Sullivan stood and extended his hand. "I'll have an officer outside your house tonight just to be safe. And I'd recommend you stay away from social media for a while. These things have a way of spinning out of control." Aiden hadn't even thought about social media. He rarely used it himself, but the idea that this case might be discussed, dissected, and debated online by strangers was unsettling. As he drove home that night, Aiden noticed a police cruiser following at a discreet distance. His protection. Detail, presumably. The sight should have been reassuring, but instead it only emphasized how much his life had changed in just a few days. The next morning brought more changes. When Aiden arrived at the hospital, he was met by curious stares and hushed conversations that stopped as he approached. In the doctor's lounge, he found Maya waiting for him, her expression grim. "Have you seen the news?" she asked without preamble. Aiden shook his head. "What news?" She handed him her tablet, open to a local news website. The headline made his heart sink. "Police chief's daughter suffers brain damage after doctor detained in alleged racial profiling incident." "It broke last night," Maya explained. "Someone leaked it to the press. The chief's office confirmed the basic facts, but they're not commenting on the pending charges." Aiden scanned the article, his dismay growing. While the facts were mostly accurate, the tone was sensationalized, playing up the racial angle and the tragic consequences for the innocent victim. His name was mentioned repeatedly, along with his ethnicity and a quote from an anonymous hospital source, describing him as devastated by the delay in treatment. "This is a nightmare," he muttered, handing the tablet back to Maya. "It gets worse," she said reluctantly. "Check your email. The hospital administration sent out a statement this morning." Aiden pulled out his phone and opened his email. The message from administration was brief but clear. While the hospital supported Dr. Chen's right to cooperate with the investigation, all staff were reminded of the media policy prohibiting unauthorized comments to the press. Any inquiries were to be directed to the hospital's public relations department. They're worried about liability, Aiden realized. If the treatment delay caused additional harm to Lily, the hospital could be named in a lawsuit. Maya finished for him. Even though it wasn't their fault. Before Aiden could respond, his pager beeped. He was needed in the ICU. Lily was having problems. He rushed to her room to find her in the midst of a seizure, her body rigid, eyes rolled back. The nursing staff had already administered anti-seizure medication and placed her on her side in the recovery position. Aiden quickly checked her vitals and the medication dosage, then stood back, watching as the seizure gradually subsided. These kinds of complications weren't unexpected after brain surgery, but they were still concerning. As Lily's body relaxed and her breathing normalized, Aiden became aware of Chief Sullivan standing in the doorway, his face ashen. Did this happen because of the delay? The chief asked, his voice barely audible. Aiden chose his words carefully. Post-operative seizures can occur after any brain surgery. They're not uncommon in cases like Lily's. That's not what I asked. Aiden met the chief's gaze directly. Would earlier treatment have reduced the risk? Possibly, but there's no way to know for certain. Sullivan nodded once, his jaw tight, then turned and walked away without another word. The seizure marked a turning point in Lily's recovery. After that, her progress seemed to stall. The weakness in her left side persisted, and her cognitive issues, memory lapses, difficulty finding words, mood swings, became more pronounced. So, her physical condition plateaued, the legal case accelerated. The district attorney filed formal charges against officers Dawson and Reynolds, official misconduct, reckless endangerment, and, in Dawson's case, witness intimidation. The police union immediately denounced the charges as politically motivated and promised a vigorous defense. Aiden gave his deposition, 5 grueling hours of questions and answers, recounting every detail of that night. The defense attorneys were particularly aggressive, questioning his memory, his perception, even insinuating that he had exaggerated the urgency of Lily's condition to make the officers look worse. Through it all, Aiden tried to maintain his normal routine. He saw patients, performed surgeries, conducted rounds, but nothing felt normal anymore. Colleagues treated him differently, some supportive, some wary, as if his situation might somehow be contagious. Patients occasionally recognized his name from the news reports, leading to awkward moments during consultations. The worst part was the hate mail. It started as a trickle, a few angry emails, a voicemail message left at his office after hours. But as the case gained more attention, especially on certain corners of the internet, the messages increased. Most were just angry rants about playing the race card or attacking our police. But a few contained explicit threats that had to be forwarded to the police. 6 weeks after the incident, Aiden was preparing for a routine procedure when his phone rang. It was Sullivan. "We need to talk," the chief said without preamble. "Not over the phone. Can you meet me at Jimmy's Diner after your shift?" Jimmy's was a small restaurant a few blocks from the hospital, popular with the staff for its late hours and private booths. Aiden arrived just after 7, still wearing his scrubs under his coat. Sullivan was already there, nursing a cup of coffee in a booth at the back. "Thanks for coming," Sullivan said as Aiden slid into the seat across from him. "I wanted to discuss this away from official channels." Aiden felt a flicker of unease. "What's happened?" "The defense has made an offer." Sullivan's voice was flat, his expression unreadable. "If Dawson and Reynolds agree to resign from the force and surrender their law enforcement certifications, the DA will drop the criminal charges. They'd walk away with no consequences?" Aiden couldn't keep the disbelief from his voice. "They'd never work in law enforcement again," Sullivan pointed out. "Their careers would be over, but they'd avoid jail time, yes." Aiden sat back, trying to process this information. "Why are you telling me this? It's not my decision to make." "Because the DA wants your input." Sullivan leaned forward. "You're the victim in one part of this case and the key witness in the other. Your opinion matters." "And what about Lily?" "She's the one who suffered the most serious consequences." Sullivan's face softened at the mention of his daughter. "She has good days and bad days. The doctors say this might be as much recovery as we can expect." The weight of that statement hung in the air between them. After a moment, Sullivan continued. "Here's the thing, Dr. Chen. A trial would be long, public, and ugly. The defense would attack your character, question your medical judgment, try to shift blame. They'd argue that Lily's condition might have been just as severe even with earlier treatment. They'd bring in their own experts to testify to that effect. And you don't want Lily to go through that, Aiden guessed. Sullivan nodded. She's already lost so much. Her memory, her coordination, possibly her future. I don't want her to lose her privacy too, to become a symbol in some public battle over race and policing. Aiden understood the chief's position. As a doctor, he'd always prioritized his patients' well-being, their dignity. And yet, if we accept this deal, he said slowly, if they resign quietly, does anything really change? The system that allowed this to happen stays intact. Not if I have anything to say about it, Sullivan replied, a new intensity in his voice. I'm implementing departmental reforms regardless of how this case ends. New training protocols, community oversight, body cameras for every officer. I'm cleaning house, Dr. Chen, but I need to know if you can live with this compromise. Could he? Aiden wondered. Could he accept an outcome that fell short of full justice but might spare Lily further trauma? That might allow him to return to something resembling his normal life. Before he could answer, his phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Maya. Turn on the news. Now. With a sense of foreboding, Aiden pulled up a news app on his phone. The breaking story made his blood run cold. Dashcam video of doctor's detention released online. Someone had leaked the video. The very footage that showed his humiliation, his desperate pleas to be allowed to help Lily, the officer's dismissive responses. It was all out there now for everyone to see. Aiden looked up to find Sullivan watching him, the same shock and anger reflected in the chief's eyes. I didn't authorize this, Sullivan said quietly. But it changes everything. Aiden nodded, a strange calm settling over him. The decision had been taken out of their hands. There would be no quiet resignations now, no private resolution. The case had just become very public, and there would be no turning back. The leaked dashcam video spread across the internet like wildfire. By morning, it had been viewed millions of times, sparking outrage, debate, and renewed calls for police reform. News vans lined up outside the hospital, reporters hoping to catch a glimpse of Dr. Aiden Chen, now the reluctant face of a movement. Aiden watched the coverage from the safety of the doctor's lounge, a sick feeling in his stomach. The video was even worse than he remembered, the officer's casual disrespect, his own increasingly desperate pleas as minutes ticked by, the moment when they finally realized whose daughter he was rushing to save. You've gone viral, Maya said, sitting beside him. The hashtag #LetDoctorSaveLives is trending. Aiden shook his head, overwhelmed. I never wanted this kind of attention. I know. She squeezed his arm. But sometimes the moment chooses you, not the other way around. His phone had been ringing nonstop. Journalists seeking comments, talk shows requesting interviews, even a few celebrities expressing support. Aiden had ignored them all, focusing instead on his patients and, increasingly, on Lily Sullivan's recovery. She had been moved to a rehabilitation facility the previous week, a place specializing in brain injury recovery. Aiden visited when he could, monitoring her progress, offering encouragement, trying not to let his guilt show when she struggled with tasks that would have been effortless before the accident. Today, as he entered her room, he found her sitting by the window, staring at a tablet computer. I saw the video, she said without looking up. Of the night you were trying to come help me. Aiden froze. Lily, you shouldn't be watching that. Why not? It's about me, isn't it? About what happened to me. She finally looked at him, her eyes clear but filled with a sadness that seemed too profound for someone so young. I wanted to understand. Aiden sat across from her, choosing his words carefully. And do you? Understand? I think so. She set down the tablet. Those officers stopped you because of how you look, because they thought you didn't belong in that neighborhood, and because of that, you couldn't reach me in time. Her directness took Aiden aback. In his experience, families often avoided such blunt assessments, preferring comforting lies to harsh truths. The brain is complicated, he said gently. Even with immediate treatment, there's no guarantee. Please don't, Lily interrupted. Don't try to make me feel better. Everyone keeps doing that, and I'm sick of it. I just want the truth. Aiden studied her face, thinner now with dark circles under her eyes, but still alight with intelligence and determination. The truth, he repeated. The truth is that earlier intervention might have improved your outcome. The truth is that what those officers did was wrong. And the truth is that you're facing a difficult road ahead, but you're not facing it alone. She nodded, seemingly satisfied with his answer. Dad says the officers will probably go to trial, now that the video is public. He says you'll have to testify. Most likely, yes. I want to testify too. Aiden blinked in surprise. Lily, that's not necessary. The medical records... I'm not a medical record, she said firmly. I'm a person, and I want the jury to see me, to know what this has cost me. She held up her left hand, which trembled, visibly despite her efforts to keep it steady. I want them to understand why this can never happen to anyone else. Her resolve reminded Aiden of her father, the same quiet strength, the same unwavering commitment to justice. Before he could respond, there was a knock at the door, and Chief Sullivan entered, looking harried. Dr. Chen, he said, nodding in, greeting. I thought I might find you here. Dad, Lily brightened. I was just telling Dr. Chen that I want to testify at the trial. Sullivan's expression softened as he looked at his daughter. We'll talk about that later, sweetheart. Right now, I need to borrow your doctor for a few minutes. In the hallway, Sullivan's professional demeanor returned. The situation has escalated. With the video out there, the DA is under enormous pressure to pursue maximum charges. The defense is getting desperate. What does that mean for us? Aiden asked. It means they're looking for leverage, anything to undermine your credibility or create reasonable doubt. Sullivan lowered his voice. They're digging into your past, your record, at the hospital, even your finances, and they're spreading rumors. What kind of rumors? Sullivan hesitated. That you deliberately took your time responding to the emergency call. That you exaggerated the time-sensitive nature of Lily's injury to make yourself look better. That this whole thing is a setup to sue the department. Anger flashed through Aiden. That's ridiculous. I have phone records showing when I was called. The surgical team can testify to when I arrived, and Lily's condition speaks for itself. I know that. But they're playing to a different audience, potential jurors who might already be inclined to trust police officers over others. Sullivan ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration Aiden had come to recognize. They're also approaching hospital staff looking for anyone who might have had conflicts with you in the past. The implications were clear. This was no longer just about that night. It was about Aiden's entire life and career being put under a microscope, scrutinized for any flaw or mistake that could be used against him. I'm not backing down, Aiden said, surprising himself with his own certainty. Sullivan studied him for a moment, then nodded. Good. Because there's something else. You should know. The police union has filed a complaint against me for betraying my officers and undermining department morale. They're calling for my resignation. Aiden was stunned. Can they do that? They can try. Sullivan's expression was grim but determined. Let them. I've been on the force for 26 years. I've looked the other way too many times, made too many excuses. Not anymore. The trial began 3 months later, on a crisp autumn morning. The courthouse steps were crowded with protesters holding signs bearing Aiden's face alongside slogans, demanding justice and police reform. A smaller but vocal group of counter-protesters supported the officers, waving thin blue line flags and chanting about law and order. Inside, the courtroom was packed with reporters, community leaders, and curious citizens who had lined up before dawn to secure a seat. Officers Dawson and Reynolds sat at the defense table, their expressions impassive as the charges were read: official misconduct, reckless endangerment, and witness intimidation. Aiden was the prosecution's star witness. For nearly 2 days, he testified about the events of that night. The emergency call, The traffic stop, the unnecessary search, the wasted minutes that might have made a difference in Lily's recovery. The defense attorneys attacked from every angle, trying to paint him as careless, opportunistic, even racist against white officers. Through it all, Aiden remained calm, answering truthfully, refusing to be provoked. When asked why he hadn't simply called ahead to inform the hospital of the delay, he explained that his phone had been confiscated during the search. When questioned about why he hadn't filed a complaint immediately after the incident, he admitted that his focus had been entirely on his patient, not on seeking personal justice. On the third day, Lily Sullivan took the stand. A hush fell over the courtroom as she walked slowly to the witness box, her left side noticeably weaker, her gait uneven. She had insisted on using no assistive devices, wanting the jury to see clearly what her injuries had cost her. Her testimony was brief, but powerful. She described waking up in the hospital, the confusion and fear, the gradual realization that parts of her body no longer worked properly. She talked about her struggles with memory and concentration, how she sometimes forgot her friends' names or got lost in familiar places. She explained how she had to relearn basic tasks, writing, tying her shoes, cutting her food. "Before the accident, I was going to apply to college on a soccer scholarship," she said, her voice steady despite the emotion evident on her face. "Now I can barely kick a ball. Before I was reading novels in French for fun. Now I sometimes can't remember the word for fork." When asked if she blamed the officers for her condition, Lily paused, considering the question carefully. "I blame the accident for my injuries," she said finally. "But I blame those officers for making them worse than they needed to be. And I blame a system that taught them it was okay to judge someone by how they look, rather than who they are." The defense had no questions for her. The trial lasted 2 weeks. The jury deliberated for just 6 hours before returning their verdict. Guilty on all counts. Officers Dawson and Reynolds were sentenced to 18 months in prison, with an additional 3 years of probation during which they were barred from seeking law enforcement positions. For Aiden, the verdict brought a complex mix of emotions: relief that justice had been served, sadness for all that Lily had lost, hope that perhaps something might change because of what they had endured together. In the aftermath, Chief Sullivan made good on his promise to reform his department. He implemented new training programs focused on implicit bias and de-escalation techniques. He established a civilian review board with real oversight powers. He required body cameras for all officers and created strict protocols for traffic stops. Other police departments across the country began adopting similar measures, often citing the Sullivan model as their inspiration. The video of Aiden's detention became required viewing in police academies, an example of how prejudice could lead to tragic consequences. 6 months after the trial, Aiden received a letter from a medical school in a neighboring state. A young, Asian-American student wrote that he had been inspired by Aiden's courage, how he had stood up not just for himself, but for everyone who had ever been judged by their appearance rather than their character. "You showed me that being a doctor isn't just about treating illnesses," the student wrote. "It's about healing what's broken in our world." Aiden kept that letter on his desk, a reminder of why he had chosen to speak up rather than stay silent. Lily continued her rehabilitation, making slow but steady progress. On the 1-year anniversary of her accident, she walked into Aiden's office without assistance, a small victory that brought tears to both their eyes. "I've been thinking," she said, sitting across from him, "about what happens next." "And what does happen next?" Aiden asked. "I've decided to study law," she said, a spark of her old determination visible in her eyes. "Civil rights law. There are still so many people who need someone to fight for them," Aiden smiled. "You'll be a formidable attorney. I had a good teacher." She returned his smile. "You showed me that sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same thing." As she left his office, Aiden thought about how a single moment had changed both their lives forever. A traffic stop, a detention, a delayed surgery. It had cost them both so much, but perhaps what they had gained was equally valuable. The knowledge that standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult, even when it's dangerous, is always worth the price.